Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Patterson and Michael Remis.
Hey now, welcome to another Tuesday edition, game day edition, Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Michael Remis in the host chair for Hustler. He'll be back later on this week, resting up for our big trade deadline show Friday, 11 to 3. But pleased to be joined shortly by Connor Hrabchak as we count down to this Winnipeg Jets game tonight, beginning of an 8-game homestand against the Chicago Blackhawks. And I have to say, looking at the standings of these two teams, Winnipeg Jets 23, 26, and 10, Chicago 23, 28, and 9. The Jets up 1 point in the standings. Kind of hard to believe the Jets are only up 1 point on the Blackhawks here on March 3rd, right before the trade deadline, considering the expectations that were on these teams coming into the year. The Winnipeg Jets coming off that historic President's Trophy last season, and Chicago navigating their way through this lengthy rebuild. So the Jets 3-4 in their last 10, return home, gaining 4 to 6 points on a 3-game homestand, back-to-back overtime losses, and third periods have really been the story for the Winnipeg Jets this year. We saw it on the weekend, their inability to hold leads. Both games, third period leads, going to overtime losses, and goals against. The third period is their least amount of goals for. The second period is their best period, and 67 goals allowed in the third period this year. Not gonna cut it. We'll bring in Connor Hrabchak in a second. We'll see how the Winnipeg Jets respond tonight as they cling to their desperate playoff hopes. Money Puck has them, if you want to look right now, 5.6%. But head coach Scott Arniel, we have the clip, says they just got to play their own game, not worry about any of the noise around them. We've got a great show coming up. As I said, Connor Hrabchak will join me shortly. He was at the morning skate. We're going to talk Jets prospects and trade deadline with Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff. Mike McIntyre, he's now acclimated back here for over a week now following his Olympic journey. We'll talk Jets with him. Had a nice column in the Free Press yesterday. And we'll get a view from the visitors. What's going on in Chicago? Ben Pope covers the Chicago Blackhawks. He'll be joining us later on in the show. And I do have to say, wouldn't be here talking to you without the help of our great sponsors, Winnipeg Jets. WST night on Thursday for Jets. Lightning, winnipegjets.com/WST for tickets. Uptown Alley, Rolly's Transfer, St. Vital Dental, St. B Mega Millions Lottery, Princess Auto, Chud's Power Sports, Manitoba Battery. We got Clean Line. We'll have the Clean Line lines coming up. Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, and the HSC Foundation Fund a Need campaign. Of course, Cool Bet. We'll go over some Cool Bet lines later on in the show. And if you missed the end of yesterday's show, WBC, World Baseball Classic, starting up this week. Canada is playing a pre-tournament game right now against the Toronto Blue Jays. Who are you cheering for in that one? Blue Jays fans, but happy to be joined by Connor Hrabchak. Was at the morning skate. Connor, welcome back to the show. You had a nice jaunt in Vancouver last week, a little Sunday Live, if you missed it, and of course the post game against the Sharks. What's going on with you, Connor?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Happy to fill in. I think as WST, we're managing the condensed schedule well here, Remis. With Huss, take a few extra days. You got a big game, big show Friday with the trade deadline. He's a little sick, so give him some days off here. Give him a little bit of a manage of the illness here. And happy to fill in. And excited for this 8-game homestand because the trade deadline is going to be coming after 2 games of this 8-game homestand. So what is this team going to look like for the final 6 games of this homestand and beyond? I think there's going to be a lot of intrigue going into Friday, of course, and then coming out of it, who's in the lineup every single night? How are maybe younger players playing if they are giving these young prospects bigger roles down the stretch and all of those things? So while the standings may not reflect it and the Winnipeg Jets might not be playing very important hockey the rest of the way, I still think there's some things that I'm excited to see and intrigued to see, especially this week with the trade deadline, Remo.
Yeah, the trade deadline the last couple of years has been a time for the Winnipeg Jets to add, and with the spot they're in the standings, you'd think this would be a time for them to sell, but I'm looking at the latest trade board at The Athletic. Trade board 8.0 from Chris Johnson.
That's too many. It's too many.
Hey, I'm not going to complain about trade boards. I have to be honest, I was maybe, I don't know if surprised is the right word, but you look at the Winnipeg Jets on the trade board. Traditionally in the past, they've had, when they're out of it, they've had guys at the top of trade boards. Johnny Oduya, going way back, Andrew Kopp, more recently, Andrew Ladd. But you have to scroll all the way down to number 30 on, the Athletics trade board. Luke Shen, number 30. Number 35, Logan Stanley. And even further down, I think it was Nyquist. Oh, sorry, Gus Nyquist is, my bad. Gus Nyquist is actually the highest one on Chris Johnson's trade board at 22. And then Murat Atesh has an article in The Athletic saying, don't expect any huge fire sales from the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, what do you make of, where the Jets rank on this trade board from The Athletic?
The Nyquist being the highest is very interesting to me because in those 8 installments of trade boards, Remis, I think if you went back to 1.0, Luke Shen was the highest and the highest by far. I remember the first couple of trade boards coming out, back in January. Luke Shen was in the top 5 or top 10 of these trade boards. Like it was almost, he was one of the guys that it was certain he'll be gone. And as we sit here today, I still think he'll get traded. And I think it's a lot more likely than not that he will get moved ahead of Friday's deadline. But to see him slide from nearly the top 5 to 30 or in the mid 30s, like you said, very interesting. Logan Stanley as well. If you go through those 8 installments of trade boards, back at 1.0, 2.0, he was up in the 15, 16 range. He's dropped all the way down to 35. That's obviously the biggest decision facing the Jets when we get to Friday's deadline. And then Nyquist, I mean, the whole conversation all year with us on this show, Remis, has been, well, at least recently when the playoffs are looking less and less likely, is like, okay, Nyquist is a pending UFA. Obviously, you move him if there's a taker, but is there a taker? I mean, this guy's played 38, 39 games, going to be close to 40 games soon here, and he hasn't scored a goal yet. And I think he has 8 assists, a lot of which are secondary too. So, I mean, he's just not affecting the game offensively. He's supposed to be an offensive producer in a team's middle 6. He's not on a super cheap deal, like $3.25 million. A lot of these contenders can't fit that in. Like they'd have to retain, the Jets would, to fit it on a lot of contenders' teams. So it's going to be interesting to see if Gus Nyquist does move, because if he does, it's not going to be for anything of really massive value. But to see him kind of leapfrog Shen and Stanley on the trade boards is quite interesting to me when his play as of late hasn't really warranted more interest league-wide. At least that's what I'm seeing and thinking.
Yeah, so the Winnipeg Jets, they don't have a second-round pick this year, don't have a fourth-round pick this year or next year, and maybe they can recoup one of them, but I think if you're expecting, big moves from the Jets, I don't think that's going to happen, and, they're not going to do anything huge like move a core piece, but even these UFAs, we'll see how much demand for them is, once the deadline has gone, we can evaluate and discuss. We'll be here for 4 hours on Friday's show, reacting to all the moves. And Connor, let's take a look at the morning skate, clean line, Winnipeg Jets lines. Here they are. Scott Arniel putting out the lines. No changes from last game. Connor, Shafley, Velarde, Perfetti, Lowry, Iafallo, Nyquist, Taves, Dewar, Koepke, Barron, Pearson, Stanley, DeMello, Sandberg, Salamonson, Fleury, Shen, and Connor Hellebuyck starting in goal. In the first game back from the Olympics, I imagine there would be time during a TV timeout or a whistle to honor the Winnipeg Jets Olympians, 2 of them in the lineup, part of the gold medal winning Team USA, Kyle Connor, Connor Hellebuyck, but also Josh Morrissey and Nino Niederreiter currently injured. Connor, your thoughts on the Winnipeg Jets lines, just rolling back to what gave them a overtime loss there in San Jose?
Yeah, I think I'm at the point of the season, Remo, where, until after the trade deadline, when things presumably will change, I'm not necessarily expecting it. Like going into an 8-game homestand where the playoff odds are at 5%, like you said, money puck, and They've made up 1 point in the standings since their 11-game losing streak. They've gone from 11 points out to 10 points out. And it's just the same. It's the same thing. It's Connor Scheifele-Velarde. It's Perfetti Lauri-Iafallo. It's Nyquist Taves Dewar. It's the same thing they ran on Sunday. They're not breaking up the top line. The defense core, they don't really have options to really change anything on the back end. So that doesn't really, surprise me that they're just running with the same thing. Josh Morrissey did skate today in a yellow non-contact. Colin Miller as well in a yellow non-contact. I know a lot of people would like to see Ville Heinola. That is one thing that they could do, is have him in the lineup on the back end. But up front, I mean, Connor Scheifele-Velarde. It's just this is the line that has played the most among all lines in the National Hockey League this season. They're going to keep running it until the wheels fall off. And I mean, a lot of people, myself included, would argue the wheels have already fallen off, but it looks like they're just going to keep rolling with it. And I thought maybe there would be some intrigue with the lines or the lineup going into an 8-game homestand in tonight's game, but doesn't look to be the case, as the Jets are rolling the same lineup back that lost them the game against San Jose.
Yeah, Hayden Fleury in the lineup. I thought maybe there's a chance Ville would be given a shot. I feel like we haven't really seen him, the former first-round pick with the Winnipeg Jets, for an extended period of time. At this point, what is it, draft plus, where was he drafted, 2018? Or 2019?
2019 first rounder?
2019,
yep.
Yeah, 2019 first rounder. So, we're 7 years later, and he hasn't really had an extended run. But we're at the point now, he's going to be UFA after this season, and I guess they feel, hey, he's not going to want to re-sign here. What's the point in seeing what's there? He's not part of our plan, and Hayden Fleury is part of our plan. He's signed for next season. You have him and Luke Schenn on the third pair. So I thought I don't think Ville has any trade value. He's passed through waivers. He's a former first-round pick. That's the biggest thing on his resume. But that was a while ago now, Connor.
Yeah, it really was. And, we do a burning question segment on Sunday Live, and one of the chatters asked us what's kind of the biggest reason for Ville Heinola being in this spot where he's in the minors every year. And I think the biggest thing we pointed to was injuries. I mean, there was 2 training camps in a row where he broke his ankle on the final preseason game, where Rick Bowness said, yeah, he would have earned that spot had he not broken his ankle. And then the next season was projected to be on the third pair to start the year. And then the ankle infection took him out for an extended period of time. That same ankle bothered him again the year after. So those 2 things really didn't help in his kind of development with the major injuries. But we're at the point, Remis, where you can't really argue against any change with this team at this point, because if Ville Heinola came in, yeah, you're seeing what he can do. You're giving him a bit of a run, and oh no, it doesn't work. Boo-hoo, you're not making the playoffs. You might just improve your draft position. And, you go back to the San Jose game, the third pair was not good. I mean, the tying goal for San Jose was Luke Schenn being caught in no man's land, and a 2-on-1 where the Sharks were able to get a shot and a rebound on the 2-on-1. And then in overtime, Hayden Fleury, I mean, you can make the argument he was kind of in a good spot with Michael Misa, maybe not. Connor Hrabchak didn't track it well. It gets by him. So the third pair was on for all of the goals against in the San Jose game. And look, I'm not saying Ville Heinola would come in and be some savior, but we're just at the point of the season where it's like, why not? Why not give this guy a run? Why not give Brad Lambert a look? Why not do all of these things? Because you're not making the playoffs. And it's a matter of time. And Friday might be that time where we start actually seeing some change in the lines and the lineup. And Remis, I don't know what you think about this, but I thought maybe even tonight, definitely Thursday, I'll be watching for it. Will there be any trade-related healthy scratches for the Winnipeg Jets? I don't know. That's not something they've typically done in the past. But is Luke Schenn going to be playing Thursday with the expectation that he's going to be moved Friday? That's something I'll be watching for both, or I guess not tonight because they're running the same lineup, but Thursday for sure.
Yeah, we're, again, refreshing Twitter /X nonstop, all the insiders following them, but make sure if you do see a trade, Connor, you don't want to get fooled by any of those parody accounts out there. It happens. It happens. So make sure, before you're going to react, hover your mouse over and make sure it's legitimate. And, Ville Heinola at this point, he's a third pairing D, but I think that's it's just a symptom of a big problem with the Jets where you have a first round pick who's not making an impact in the lineup. And there's been too much of that from the Jets since, he was drafted in 2019. You look at the number of draft picks playing a significant role. It's one, Cole Perfetti. The other one, in lineup, Dylan Sandberg. He's played 259 games. He was drafted in 2017. And so since 2017, you really haven't had any picks. And when you lose a player like Nikolai Ehlers, you would like to have someone from the organization come up and replace him. But, they haven't really had that. And I think that's kind of why they are where they are right now.
Yeah, and Remis, also Elias Salomonsson more recently, right? Like obviously Perfetti and Sandberg have been contributors for years now, but Salomonsson stepping into the lineup this year, that happened because Neil Pionk got hurt. Like they weren't just being proactive and were like, oh, we'll try out Elias Salomonsson. Like, no, that was out of necessity. And it's like, oh, they stumbled into Elias Salomonsson being awesome and controlling his minutes, which is what he's done since his second recall here. But it's not like the Winnipeg Jets were tumbling down the standings and we're like, we need to shake up the defense core. Let's call up our stud prospect defenseman, Elias Salomonsson. No, like Pionk got hurt. So they just thought they needed someone. And it's something that there's really no, like I've heard on throughout the weeks and months of this Winnipeg Jets season that like, oh, if players in the AHL were producing, they'd be up by now. But I don't really think that there's any recent Winnipeg Jets evidence to suggest that they'd be proactive in bringing up a player if it's not for an injury. Like I has a prospect ever just mid-season fought their way onto the team? And that's obviously a reflection of the drafting and developing system too, which we could probably spend a couple hours on if you wanted to. But it's just that part of the season where like, yeah, a guy will get hurt or a guy will get traded up and yeah, we'll bring up this prospect and oh, he's good, I guess. And it's like, well, could have had Elias Salomonsson a couple games or like 30 games ago to help this defense core a little bit. But it's something that the drafting and developing is a question mark. And in the offseason, they signed Nyquist and Pearson because they didn't think all of these guys up front especially would be ready in time. And I guess their point is kind of being proven because the veterans aren't performing. The prospects aren't breaking the door down in the AHL. And that's maybe the most concerning part of all of this, Remo, is that they're 28th in the NHL. And you go and look at the Manitoba Moose's snazzy new website, and there's no prospect that is performing above their expectation right now, especially at forward.
Yeah, it's an interesting time here for Winnipeg Jets, a different time than we've had in past trade deadlines, but it is Jets, Blackhawks tonight. And let's hear from the head coach, Scott Arniel. You remember the Jets last played the Blackhawks January 19th. It was Jonathan Toews' return. A wild scene there with him taking the lap during the TV timeout for one of the most extended standing O's that you'll ever see. The Jets, if you remember the score, Connor, the Jets did lose that game 2-0, and the teams met here the first time October 30th with the Jets winning 6-3. Series tied 1-1. Here's head coach Scott Arniel on Chicago's strengths.
Oh, yeah, speed is one of their strengths, obviously, and it seems like that's a lot of the young teams that you see now that are coming on. They're built with an excess of, talent and speed. But big thing that kind of going back to our last game in there, they get some big rangy D that are mobile. They do a real good job of pressuring you 200 feet. It isn't just in certain areas. They come hard. And like I said, that defense is pretty big with real good sticks. And we spent a lot of time in their end of the rink last time, but they did a pretty good job of keeping us the outside. So our mindset is about getting inside a little bit more and forcing them to have to turn and pull pucks out from around their goalie.
Scott Arniel talking about getting inside and Chicago's speed. Now, this is the Winnipeg Jets' 8-game homestand. They seem to be clinging to the faint hope that they have to, go on a run here and get in the playoffs. Here's Scott Arniel on the importance of this homestand for their place in the standings.
We can't look at it like that and say, oh no, if it's all 8 games we just got to focus on Chicago tonight. You're right on the 6 teams in the West there that we got to take advantage of. They're all games that are in our building, and it's we have to be at our best. I know I've been saying it since coming out of the break, is that we got 4 of 6 out on that road trip. Should have been 6 of 6, but at the end of the day we got 4 of 6. We got to keep doing it. We got to keep gaining points here, and not just 1, but we need 2 points and starts tonight.
2 points, starts tonight, and here's the team's mindset heading in to this homestand.
Take care of our business. There's so many teams that are in the pileup. Usually in the past, there's 4 or 5 teams that are already out of it and aren't even are looking to get ready for next year. And this year there's so many teams that are kind of all around in both conferences, and so let's take care of our business. It's hard because you're watching the sort of win one lose ones happening in the with other teams that we're trying to catch, but you just got to hope that 1, 2, maybe 3 teams go on a 4 or 5 game skid, and that's when you gain that ground, and that's what we need to happen. That's why we need to gain our points first and foremost.
Winnipeg Jets going with the mindset, hey, we need to work, control, work on our game. Connor, I guess that's all you can do at this point when you're not mathematically eliminated, right? You can't throw in the towel, can you?
No. And you don't expect a coach or a player to ever say that. You don't expect a coach to say, yeah, we're going to try and lose tonight to improve our draft position. These guys, everyone, players, coaches, management, they're getting paid millions of dollars to try and win hockey games. That's what they're going out to do. So that is not shocking to me. But anytime a coach comes up and says, yeah, on this 8-game homestand, we're trying to take care of our business and hope that 3 teams lose 4 or 5 in a row, you're in a very tough spot. So I think, Scott O'Neill and the Winnipeg Jets recognize that they're in a very tough spot right now. 10 points out of the playoffs, 8-game homestand on deck. Some good opponents on this homestand as well. Some not so good. You get Chicago tonight. You get Vancouver Saturday. But you also get Tampa Bay on Thursday. You get Colorado later on in the homestand as well. So, you never want to be in a spot where heading into the trade deadline, you're hoping for 3 or 4 teams to go on a 5-game losing skid. But the Winnipeg Jets are obviously going to go out and try and win every single game. And that's got to be the mindset from the coach and the players alike.
Yeah, you look at the standings here. Ahead of them, the Jets have 56 points. The LA Kings, 62. Nashville, 62. San Jose, 62. I imagine those teams will be active as we approach the deadline. And in the playoff spot right now in the wild card position, Edmonton, who acquired Connor Murphy from Chicago yesterday. They are at 66 points. In the Utah Mammoth, 66 points. What a season it's been from them so far. And we talked about, third periods, inability to hold leads. It's been a theme for the Jets the whole season. Scott O'Neill spoke about that after today's morning.
Areas how it's come about. I think that the one thing that I do notice is that we're not as what's the right word? We're not as aggressive, or we're in the past. It's gone to shutdown mode, and it's been automatic, and we've done all the right things. And this year we've been a little bit looser at times, maybe taking a penalty at times, a bad turnover at times, getting caught in different situations and that's kind of been sort of something that's gone on for us for a while. We've talked about it, we've looked at it, tried to stay on top of that. The importance of you can't just be good in the first 2 periods. You have to be consistent throughout the game, and that means in those third periods, those are vital points. And the other night I talked about our first 3 shifts in the third period the other night were terrible, and that's the part where that's us, that's our mindset, that's our group making sure, the coaching staff making sure that we're ready each shift, and especially when we have a 1-goal lead like we did, because there's the crucial points.
Connor, sometimes I'm not sure if the Winnipeg Jets, their record is who they are, or they're just a team that's been unlucky, losing in overtime, losing all these 1-goal games, and, it's just a down year, and they'll have a bounce back next season when, they have players who battle injuries are going to be healthy. I'm not sure which side of that you're on, Connor. Is probably somewhere in between, like everything. For
sure. We've talked about this for a few weeks and months too. we don't think the Winnipeg Jets are a true talent, 28th best team in the National Hockey League on paper, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get them back to being a top 10 team, a top 5 team, a number 1 team like they were last season. And a lot of that does start with the players that got hurt in the preseason or came into the season with injuries, bouncing back next season. So how much you believe in Dylan Sandberg's play dipping a little bit this season and then bouncing back next year, Adam Lowry's play dipping this season and bouncing back next year, Cole Perfetti, the first 30 games of his season, absolutely a dip there coming out of the high ankle sprain, but he's already looking to be bouncing back a little bit. So the Winnipeg Jets looking at next season and your belief in this team going into next season, that's one of the biggest questions is, will we get the same versions of Lowry, Sandberg, and Perfetti that we saw last year as opposed to this year when all 3 of those guys were recovering from injuries? Perfetti, the high ankle, Sandberg, the broken wrist, Lowry, the hip surgery. All of those things contributed to a team where they needed those secondary contributions outside of the top line and Josh Morrissey and Connor Hrabchak. They didn't get them. And that's why they are where they are in the standings. Are they truly one of the 5 worst teams in the NHL? I don't think so. But like I said, I still think there's a ton of work that needs to go into this year's deadline, this year's offseason, and the draft to make this team a top 10 team again in the National Hockey League standings. And a big part of that starts with all 3 of those guys returning to form that they were last season, Perfetti, Sandberg, and Lowry.
Yeah, and we talked about injuries. Right now, Josh Morrissey banged up, Nino Niederreiter banged up. One player still injured who's been in and out of the lineup this year, Colin Miller. Scott O'Neill was asked about the Winnipeg Jets injury situation heading into the first game of this 8-game homestand.
Yeah, he's kind of been up and down. He's had some days where he's feeling better, and then it's kind of knocked him back a couple of days here. So he's kind of still fighting it here. So we'll just hopefully he can just continue to do his workouts and get his therapy and hopefully improve each day.
And then I know with Vlad Nemestikov, you gave a bit of a timeline, but thought maybe sooner. But he's not skating on his own yet.
No.
And right now you don't have an extra forward up here. Do you expect maybe at some point you may change the mix just to get an extra body?
It has a lot to do with Friday. So it has a lot to do with Friday. So you're only allowed 4 recalls after Friday. So they're here. The Moose are here. It's not like we have to scramble and get somebody into town. They're all here anyway, so we'll just take it day to day that way.
There it is, the Jets taking it day to day with the injuries, Connor, and this roster could look a bit different after the deadline on Friday or even before the deadline as teams are smartening up and making their deals, a bit earlier than in the past.
Yeah, and there's even some reports coming out today. Darren Dreger reporting that talks are maybe heating up between Buffalo and St. Louis on Robert Thomas. So we'll have to monitor that story too, because Elliot Friedman did report on Saturday that, might be more likely than not that Robert Thomas actually does get moved at the deadline. So yeah, there's the report on screen there. Darren Dreger, sources say talks between Buffalo and St. Louis involving Robert Thomas are heating up. So that is a very, very interesting one. Robert Thomas, a prime age player with a great contract, but St. Louis 31st in the National Hockey League right now. So they're going to maybe try and cash in on a futures laden deal to spring them and maybe take a top 3, top 2, top 1 pick if they win the lottery and start maybe a bit of a mini rebuild there in St. Louis. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of discussion here in Winnipeg, Remo, because obviously the pending UFAs are going to be the main topic of discussion. Stanley, Shen, Nyquist, Pearson, all of those guys. But is there anyone under the radar that maybe we aren't talking about that could be on the move for the Winnipeg Jets? I was very adamant on Sunday that won't be the case, but maybe it could be. And you look at players like Nino Niederreiter and Vlad Nemestikov, I probably would have grouped into that mix, but now they're both injured. So how does that change their situations? You look at a guy like Morgan Barron, who the chat probably won't like it, but he's a guy that could get moved and has a very reasonable cap hit and has an extra year of term and could probably bring back a pretty good haul for this team right now. And again, I know fans like Morgan Barron and the breakout this year has been evident, but it's something that the Winnipeg Jets have to consider, and they might get calls on a guy like Morgan Barron. So there's all of these storylines and maybe ones that we aren't even talking about here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily that could come to fruition in the next couple of days here. But that Robert Thomas deal is going to be
Get ready for the Price is Right.
if it gets done.
Yeah, gotta love autoplay on websites as I bring up the TSN.
It startled me there. I was like,
trade
holy.
bait board.
There you go.
Sorry, I blame autoplay. But we mentioned the Athletic had the Gus Nyquist as the highest Winnipeg Jet at like 20. They got Luke Shen at 19 as their highest, and Logan Stanley way down at 32. So that's the TSN trade bait board. Everyone's got their own. Maybe the thing we can learn from these trade bait boards where some players are higher, some players are lower, that nobody knows anything and they're just making it up. That's something maybe we should consider. Anyways, we'll talk more Winnipeg Jets. Mike McIntyre, the Winnipeg Free Press, he's going to join me. I had a great column in the Free Press yesterday about the state of the Jets. But first, we'll throw to Hustler, and then I'll be joined by Stephen Ellis of Daily Faceoff for a little Jets prospect discussion and trade deadline as well. But first, here's Huss.
Hey, Bob, you hear the news?
I can't listen to the news, Daryl.
This is different.
Oh, it's so negative.
Not this time. Manitoba's got these new jobs agreements. And when the government builds things like new schools and hospitals, they'll hire Manitoba workers first.
Really?
Creating good jobs with union standards and more apprenticeships for Manitobans. And we'll get rid of those out-of-province license plates on job sites.
Keeping our money working for Manitobans, eh?
You betcha.
Well, that's how it should work.
I knew you'd like it.
A message from Manitoba's Building Trades and Federation of Labor.
Got a little chilly the last couple days when it is cold. Actually, anytime. If you're looking to go out for a great time, maybe get away from hockey, your sour taste about the Olympics, Uptown Alley, a great spot to do that. No place you'll have more fun than Uptown Alley with your gang, with 5 and 10 pin bowling, laser tag, a state-of-the-art arcade, and amazing food and beverage options. If you're just going out there to have a good time or you want to plan a group or corporate event, best place for birthday parties for kids, teens, or adults. And of course, if you want to do an event there, you basically just let them know your numbers, what activities you want to do, what you want to eat, any add-ons, and the friendly staff at Uptown will take care of all the rest. Find out more on booking your next event at Uptown Alley at 488-0000 or check them out online at uptownalley.ca. If you've got a move coming up into the spring and summer, holler at the gang over at Rolly's Transfer, a great supporter of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, Rolly's is family-owned and operator for over 60 years and the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. If you check out their website at rollys.com, top right corner, you'll click on Request an Estimate. Use that promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies, and then let them know when and where you're moving and what needs to go, and their friendly staff will turn it around quickly with a great quote and get you locked in for the white glove treatment and service that they've been famous for now into their 7th decade. Rolly's Transfer, the most trusted name in the moving game. Find out more today and plan ahead at rollys.com. And just before we bring in Brandon, got to shout out Dr. Terry and the great people over at St. Vital Dental Center. It's not the most glamorous thing or the thing you're looking most forward to, but I can tell you it's always nice seeing the great people at St. Vital Dental Center. And they've been taking care of generations of Winnipeggers and Manitobans for all their dental needs, handling clients from 6 months to 99 plus with the full array of dental services, from cleanings and checkups to surgeries like dental implants. They do it all. Check them out online at stviteldental.ca. You can make an appointment online to pop by and see Dr. Terry and his great staff. New spot, 167 St. Anne's Road, convenient free parking right behind the building. Big thanks for the support from the St. Vital Dental Center.
Pleased to be joined by Stephen Ellis from Daily Faceoff. Stephen, how's it going? Thanks so much for coming on the program. How's it going for you as we count down toward the trade deadline?
Well, at first I thought like the post-Olympics would be kind of like disappointing and be like, all right, fine. Like we just saw this great fun hockey for 2 weeks where everyone was focused on the same thing. And now it's over. How do we kind of move on from that? But at least the trade deadline keeps things interesting, although this has not been a very interesting lead up to the trade deadline, which I don't know if I like or not. Like in some cases, it's like it's less work. Yay. On the other hand, this is kind of a big news time. And if nothing happens, that's kind of dull too.
I thought, since we had the break, GMs would be talking. They're back. The floodgates open. So many trades right away. And it's on Friday. It's currently Tuesday. I'm kind of surprised that we haven't had anything. There hasn't been any late night breaking trades like we've had in the past, but maybe it's just going to be a bigger storm as we get closer. But we'll hit the trade deadline more shortly. Some names that might be on the move, but you do cover prospects and the draft for Daily Faceoff. Do an incredible job about that. I wanted to ask you about a couple Winnipeg Jets prospects. Kieran Walton, third in the OHL in points right now. What have you seen so far from his season?
Just another great year for a guy that was drafted in the 6th round. And I remember watching him in his draft year and seeing things where really his OHL draft year, I should say. And he was really good with North York. And at the same time, I think some scouts were worried, was he going to be a good enough skater to play at the next level? Was he going to be, could he be something more than just a big guy? And I think that was something that we saw in that first year in the OHL, where it wasn't really the case. And, I think with him just in general, going the last couple of years and just really evolving his game to be a really good two-way player, be very aggressive, but then also just show all that skill. Like, that's something you're really looking for. And then he has that 92-point season last year. I was a little surprised we didn't really see him on Canada's radar for the World Juniors. I know there were a lot of centers, and that was going to be something that was probably going to push him down, but he's still a 6'6" monster that can go out there and dominate. And so far, it's been really good to see what he's been able to do. A really good puck handler, a really good playmaker. And even after the move from Sudbury to Peterborough, we've seen a guy that just continues to just put pucks on net, create opportunities. Like, I watched him play against it was Brantford recently, and he had 11 shots on net, didn't score, but it was a big reason why that team ended up winning in overtime, which is a big deal because the Bulldogs are a tough team to beat. They're one of the best teams in the CHL. So very happy with Walton's development. It'll be interesting to kind of see how his game develops when he goes to the AHL, if he continues to be productive. I still feel like we're talking about maybe like a third-line center at best, but if you get a third-line center out of the 6th round, you're extremely happy.
Yeah, I would think so. So that's one, Jets prospect we're tracking. Another one, Kevin He, drafted in the 4th round in 2024, was involved in a trade this year from Niagara to Flint. How has his development gone this year, and where is he in relation to Kieran Walton on the Jets prospect rankings?
I think they're so different players. I think with He, the big thing there is just how speedy and how much of a workhorse he is. And I think you're looking at him, and if he can just add a bit more physicality to his game, he'd be a bit more difficult to play in that standpoint. He's going to make himself very valuable because you see so many guys who could put up close to 40 goals in a season and in the OHL and put up 60, 70 points. Like, that's good, but that's nothing spectacular. And I think for him, the fact that he went to Flint, has an opportunity to still play a lot of minutes like he was in Niagara, which just, let's be real, Niagara, tough team to watch a lot of nights, a lot of on ice, a lot of off ice drama, things like that. So going over to Flint, a team that's in the hunt there, they're, I believe, like 1 point out of leading the West Division. Good battle there for Windsor. It's a tough division to play against, 100%, because Sioux's a tough team. You can never ignore them any night. Saginaw doesn't win a ton, but they've got a lot of high-end goal scorers and all these, make things interesting there on that front there. So there's that. But I think with the way he's been able to play in Flint, just showing off that he could be this energetic guy, I think he's also been a bit more physical than we saw him in Niagara. It feels like he's going out there and trying to land more hits, which you're looking for, because he does also kind of look like a future bottom 6 player that could go out there and bring the energy, kill penalties, and do things like that, and add in the rare goal every now and then. I think in the NHL, he's a heavy shooter, but a lot of scouts are worried that his offensive game is not going to be able to translate. He's not going to be able to be the jack of all trades up front for a team, in this case, the Winnipeg Jets, and I feel like that's going to hurt his high-end offensive production. But as long as he continues to be tough to play against in that bottom 6, I think he's going to bring a lot of value.
Yeah, 2 players we saw at the World Juniors on defense for Sweden, leading, helping them win the gold medal. Alphonse Frey, Sasha Boumediene. How has how's their post World Juniors stints with their clubs gone? As we're into March now? I had to double check the calendar there.
Yeah, so Frey's actually found a bit more ice time. I believe he's playing, he's still not playing a ton, but we have seen some times where he's dipped into that 18, 19 minutes a night, which he wasn't always getting. There were points where he's playing 7, 8 minutes a night in the SHL. And, if you look at the numbers, he's got 8 points this season in 37 games. Nothing special, but I watched a couple of games ago where he had a 3-point night, and I believe he actually had this stretch of play where it was 6 points in 4 games. So 6 of his 8 points came in a 4-game stretch. So he's playing with a lot of confidence. The ice time is starting to improve, so that's really good because I loved his tournament at the World Juniors. Boumedien's an interesting one where this feels like an overall disappointing year. I know Boston University is not the greatest team in the NCAA this year by any means, but he showed a lot of promise in the NCAA playoffs, and then he was so good at the U18s last year, and it just feels like the numbers just haven't been able to follow him at BU, and there were points at the World Juniors where he was so-so, and I do like the fact that he is playing a lot of minutes, though. We see him sometimes play 22, 23, up to 25 minutes a night, and I still feel like he's done well on Boston University, a team that is quite flawed, but I was just kind of hoping for another level of his offensive game that when he's really confident with the puck, we see what he's capable of. Like, he put up really good numbers in the USHL as a rookie. He put up outstanding numbers at the U18s this past year. And then obviously actually had a pretty solid World Juniors, maybe not one of the better guys, but still produced a few points. It felt like we were just hoping for a bit more with the puck this year.
And the Jets will be adding another player to their prospect pool. They're batting a whole group of them, but it seems like they're in line for a pretty high pick, 7.5% chance at first overall. What kind of player could the Jets be getting in their prospect pool, picking in line at 6th right now, but potential for higher?
Yeah, like obviously you're kind of hoping to get a chance at Ivor Stenberg or Gavin McKenna at the first couple picks. But what you could be getting at 6 is you can getting a guy like Carson Karls, who would be easily the best defenseman in the pipeline, a guy that's so confident, hardworking player. He's another one of those guys that comes from a farm family, so you have that off-ice work ethic and work just building all that muscle. Like, he's got that in spades, but he's also been very productive this year. So there's that. Albert Smits out of Latvia. We just saw him at the Olympics. We saw him at the World Juniors, played well at both events. I know a lot of scouts are excited about him. His numbers kind of like dwindled off a little bit when he's playing in Finland, and he did switch teams recently. But I do feel like that, just overall standpoint, there's a lot going for him and could be in the NHL very, very soon. You're looking at like maybe Keaton Verhoff falls. Maybe if you get in that top 3, you can get a guy like him where he could be an everyday defenseman. So it feels like kind of no matter what, if you're picking 3rd to 6th, it feels like a defenseman's kind of in that conversation. You can look at maybe a guy like Oscar Hemming, who missed the first half of the season because he actually had nowhere to play due to a contract dispute in Finland, but ever since has been just outstanding in college at Boston College. Really loving what he's been able to do. Tynan Lawrence, he's a good center that I know his stock has fallen a lot in the last few months. He made the decision after the World Juniors to go play college out of the USHL, and just the points haven't shown up. So I know that has concerned a few scouts, but you still see him a lot of those times able to go out, dominate shifts. And then one more I'll throw is Caleb Malhotra, a centerman. Really love what we've seen from him in Brantford. We saw him at the OHL Top Prospect Game, the CHL USA Top Prospects Challenge, and in both events, he was one of the best players on the ice, no matter the team. So I'd say there's a lot of talent. This isn't an elite draft by any means. Anyone saying this is below average, I would say, is not correct. But I think you're just, given that this is a team that I don't think many people expect to be in the bottom of the standings for a long time, and that this might just be kind of a blip on the radar, as you would hope if you're a Jets fan, going out there and getting somebody who could be an impact player in the next 2 years, I think you got to be really excited about.
Yeah, we're not quite at the point where we're hitting the lottery simulator every day here on the program, but I'm sure it'll be creeping up pretty soon. And looking ahead to the draft, I saw you did a write-up on Daily Faceoff, just looking at every team's, how many picks they have for the next couple of years. The Jets without picks in rounds 2 and 4 this year and next year. Is that a concern for the organization?
No, I wouldn't say that, because I know their pipeline's not great, but again, all it takes is Connor Hrabchak to be a Vezina Trophy candidate again next year, or to kind of be that Olympic goalie we're expecting, and that could fix things. Would you like to have a few more draft picks at your disposal? Yeah, probably. But it's just hard to look at this team and the talent that they have and think, okay, this is a long-term issue for the Winnipeg. Like, I think they're just 1 or 2 key players away from being able to make this a true contender again. So I wouldn't be too concerned. And again, if you get a guy like Albert Smits, like, he could be in the NHL next year, like, realistically. Carson Karls maybe another year or 2, and you're looking at that. but you're still looking at guys who could be impactful players very quickly. And I think that alone, like, you're okay, we're happy where we are. We don't need 1,000 draft picks to.
Will be interesting to see how it plays out with the Jets. Traditionally, the last couple of years, teams looking to add at the deadline, looking to trade off players. But you look at their roster, it doesn't seem like a huge, anyone who's going to fetch a huge return like Andrew Kopp did a couple of years ago. I mean, what do you think a team is looking to give up for Logan Stanley? Could they get a first-round pick here?
I think with this market, it's definitely not out of the question, especially depending on which teams you're looking at here, where, trying to think of a good team that would be a good fit there. But, it's something where, if Seattle's buying, would they take a chance? They got 2 first-rounders. That Tampa Bay picks a later first round. Would they say, Logan Stanley is one of the best defensemen, let's take a chance at it? So I think it's going to be one where the fact that the market's not big, prices could end up being much higher than you'd expect. And let's say you throw one of your expiring UFAs away and you get maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick. I think you're still considering that a win, because if you're going to lose those guys at free agency, or you just weren't too interested in keeping them anyways, at least getting something for them at least will help stock the cupboard here. So I feel like most of what we would expect for Winnipeg to get back are draft picks. Probably not a ton of high ones outside of maybe you getting a first if the right team starts calling for Logan Stanley.
Yeah, I think that's what we're looking at here. We'll still be tuned in, following all the insiders leading up to the trade deadline, but some big names on the Daily Faceoff trade board. Robert Thomas, Nazem Kadri, Elias Pettersson, Vincent Trocheck, some of the big names at center. Now, which one of these do you think is the most likely to actually get traded?
Feels like it's Kadri, right? It feels like that's something where a lot of teams in the Central are definitely going to be calling about him. Like Colorado could really use a guy like Kadri, and they already had him, so they know that he'd be good there and be good for a few years there. So it'll be interesting. I think it also, if you listen to Kadri's interviews, he expects to be moved. With Vinny Trocheck, that's another one where it's like the timeline of when the Rangers are going to be truly competitive again and when Trocheck, his contract ends, they just don't really align too well. So that's something where it feels like another safe one. Trading Robert Thomas, I feel like would be a mistake for the Blues. But if you get an offer you can't refuse, you can't refuse it, right? Especially when you look at Thomas, has missed a lot of time this year due to injuries and other things. It's something where maybe you can, the fact that he's got a really cap-friendly contract where if he can hit 80 points a year and you're paying $8.1 million for him, you're probably excited about trying to acquire him, but it's going to be expensive. A team like Utah or Anaheim or Detroit, those are teams that have the assets to make it work. But does it make sense? That's the question in there. So I'd say those are the ones we're looking at here and saying, I don't think Thomas gets traded. I don't think Kyrou gets traded. It'd be kind of a bummer if they aren't on deadline day, because those are the guys everyone's really hoping to see get moved. But when you look at Trocheck, you look at Kadri, it feels like those are they're done. Their final days are coming.
The big names get a lot of headlines, get a lot of clicks, but sometimes at the deadline, it's a player that not everyone is talking about who can really help a team in the playoffs. You wrote about some under-the-radar additions to watch. Who's a player who might not cost a lot that you think could really help a team for their playoff push?
It'll be interesting to see if Pavel Mintyukov out of Anaheim gets traded, because he's a pending RFA, so he's not like a pending UFA like a lot of these guys, which could potentially cost him a bit more than maybe, say, a Luke Shen type situation. But I think with him, he's 22 years old. He's played top line Anaheim at points. He's been sat at times. He was a top 10 prospect who came in with some really good numbers in junior hockey. And there's a lot of reason to believe he's still going to be an impactful player. But when you're looking at Jackson Lacombe and Olin Zellweger have kind of just taken over on the one side there in Anaheim, it doesn't make a ton of sense playing limited minutes. So that'd be something where I look for that to be a situation there. And we know goalies are always an interesting topic because it is very hard to trade goalies. I did a story this week looking at the biggest goalie trades in the salary cap era, and almost all of them happened in 2006. It was Tuukka Rask was traded, and who else? There's Dwayne Rolliston and Roberto Luongo, and they were all in a short period of time, and all of those guys ended up having pretty good careers with their teams. But I think Alex Nedeljkovic out of San Jose. Like, if you need a guy who could score goals, because he's done that in the AHL, if you need a guy who can get into fight, he could do that. But his main job is also to play goalie. And it could feel like one of those situations where a team trades for him. He goes on this like hot little run here. Like, I know Vegas has had a lot of different goalies, but like, what if they took a chance on him? Vegas and San Jose are not necessarily good friends, but that'd be kind of an interesting one, because on a good team, Nedeljkovic could be a very solid goalie. And playing in San Jose has been an opportunity for him to prove that at points. So I'd say those are kind of the guys you're looking at and saying, yeah, there's some value there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. One goal, we've had that goalie article. The one that stood out to me was a huge trade. Ryan Miller to the Blues, and he thought it was going to be the one to put them over the hump, but it didn't work out as well as something like Dwayne Rollison to the Oilers, and that's going back 20 years ago now. So not a ton of goalie trades. As we look around the league, is there a team that intrigues you and what they're going to do before the deadline here?
I would go, I'll say I got a Ryan Miller St. Louis Blues jersey because I happen to have a Ryan Miller jersey collection. And after he got traded to the Blues, I found it in Buffalo. And it was really cheap because Sabres fans just weren't happy about it. And it didn't really work out for St. Louis at all. I'd say I got to look at Detroit. That's one where it's very interesting, and particularly because of the goalie situation. Now, we know John Gibson left the last game with an injury. It doesn't seem like it's going to be anything long-term. It seems like he took a shot. It didn't feel right, and they were just being cautious on that. But John Gibson's played well enough where he could be kind of I don't know how long-term of an answer a guy in their 30s is going to be, but he could be the guy for a couple more years. But then you go and look at the rest of their goaltending they have, and they've got Trey Augustine, one of the best goalies in the NCAA year after year, looks ready to turn pro this coming season. Sebastian Cossa has been lights out at the AHL. Those two guys, they're going to have to fight to be the kind of the long-term number one, but at the same time, you trade either of them knowing they're going to bring you incredible value, and then you've got the other guy, or do you trade none knowing they are goalies and it's the hardest position to predict and you never know what's going to work out there? Like, you look at Florida Panthers, they traded Devin Levi, they had Spencer Knight, that's who they felt confident in, and it took a few years for Spencer Knight to become an everyday NHL goaltender, and obviously Devin Levi hasn't hit that yet with the Buffalo Sabres. So sometimes having those goalies, you want that. But then you look at Detroit, they also have Michael Posma, who's been very good in the AHL. They've got Michael Prattle, who was Slovakia's goalie at the World Juniors. And they've got a couple guys that are very promising where few teams have anywhere close to the goaltending depth they have. Could they use that to go out there and acquire someone like a Robert Thomas or a Vinny Trocheck or Blake Coleman, whoever it ends up being? So it's a very interesting situation for Detroit where Nate Danielson's probably the guy that everyone's looking at probably being trade bait, but it's their goalies where everything gets really interesting.
Will be interesting. We're following it all. Daily Faceoff. Steven, you want to let everyone know where they can find your work and what's coming up the pipeline?
Yeah, so Daily Faceoff, of course, for all my prospect stuff, all my NHL stuff. If you really like going really deep on prospects, I do the Western Front show every Monday and Friday on Victory Plus, talking about all the best players in the WHL. And we're going to have a big trade deadline show on deadline day. Looking forward to that. I'll be watching, not participating this year. I'll be focusing more on getting all the articles on the website done. And again, every year I kind of do something fun to kind of pass the time at trade deadline. I built Lego like 2 years ago. I think last year I was playing NHL 25 the whole time. We'll see kind of if I have the time to do that this year, if it's busy enough.
Perfect. Well, Steven, always appreciate having you on the show, chopping up, talking hockey. Hopefully we can do it again soon. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks so much.
Midnight, Thursday, March 5th is the deadline for the St. B Mega Millions Lottery early bird prizes. There's going to be 2 winners of $100,000 cash, or either a 26 Chevy Silverado EV or the Ford F-150 Lightning Platinum, both worth over $115,000. $100,000 Fair Connect travel voucher plus $20,000, or again $100,000 tax free. Also, 25 winners of $1,000 or an Apple iPhone 17 Pro or Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus, and you're also going to be in for the grand prizes, the big ones. You want to be Manitoba's next millionaire? This is the way to do it. one of 5 $1.5 million dream home packages or $1.25 million cash. Canadian, tax-free. Get your tickets today. StBMegaMillionChoices.ca. You can also pop by your local London Drugs or Red River Co-op location to pick them up. But make sure you get them before midnight, March 5th. That's this Thursday. So you're in for $280,000 of early bird prizes as well as the big grand prizes. I do want to thank our friends at Princess Auto for their wonderful support of WST. Won't be too long before we're back at Princess Auto Stadium cheering on the Bombers. In the meantime, Princess Auto serving Canadians coast to coast with the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new waiting for you at Princess Auto. So pop by and see them, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, out in Brandon, or you can shop online 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. The snowmobile season continues to be an amazing one. A little more snow last night, and a lot of people will be hitting the trails on the weekend. Our pals at Chud's Power Sports are dominating the snowmobile season, and right now they have just started the Polaris 2027 Snow Check program up at Chud's in Gimli at the corner of Highway 8 and 231. It's for pre-ordering the new snowmobile models for next year. If you pre-order, you get the best deal of the year on the new models, plus an extra 2-year warranty for a total of 3 years instead of just the normal 1 year, $250 in free accessories, and the golden ticket, which will give them $1,000 off the 2028 Snow Check if they want to trade up to 27. It runs now until March 13th. The header is running on the website at chudspowersports.com. So get on over to that, and while you're at it, you can start thinking about spring with bikes and ATVs and RVs, because Chuds has it all. The Power Sports Superstore in Manitoba for over 80 years.
There's us resting up Friday's big trade deadline show. Little load management today. Trade deadline just around the corner. I see Brian Lawton, former NHL player, agent, general manager, saying the Blues appear ready to move on from Jordan Binnington. 16-team no-trade list is in play, but feels like a move is a foregone conclusion at this stage with where the Blues are heading in the near term. So a lot of rumors swirling around, a lot of change in the air for a number of teams. And that's the title of the column from Mike McIntyre in the Winnipeg Free Press, who joins us now. Mike writing about change in the air for the Winnipeg Jets. Mike, how's it going for you today? What are you, still on Italy time, a week back from the Olympics here?
I'm still in, so I'll apologize in advance. I'm not expecting the coughing fits of my appearance last week, but I'm battling the tail end of bronchitis and a sinus infection. That was my souvenir. Some athletes brought home like medals. I brought home
stuffed animal.
Yeah, and stuffed animals. That's right. I would have preferred the stuffed animal, Connor, quite frankly. I should have hit Nathan McKinnon up for his. But yeah, my souvenir was a sinus infection and bronchitis that's been pretty stubborn. So I'm playing hurt a little bit as well. I had some load management last week. I know Huss is also shelved day to day. I'm just glad you cleared up. This time of year, when someone isn't in the lineup, you know, there might have been speculation that Huss had been like moved to Edmonton Sports Talk or something, like a blockbuster deal. So it's good to know that that this is not, that he's not being held out for roster related reasons. It's important to clarify this time of year for sure.
Important to clarify for sure here, Connor. You go ahead here.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you're joking about the roster related reasons, of course, but as it pertains to the Winnipeg Jets, I don't know about you, but I don't know if I was expecting it today, but kind of shocked that we're not seeing any, holding out of players. Yeah. I think maybe, do you think that could happen Thursday, the night before the deadline, that the Jets might hold a few players out that are maybe pending UFAs projected to be on the move?
I do. Now, here's the thing though, Connor, and some Jets fans might not want to hear this. Does this speak more to an overall lack of interest or perceived value in what the Jets have that they haven't done that yet. Now, the one obvious one to me is Logan Stanley, because, you know, I think from what we're hearing, certainly from some of the insiders and just our own informed speculation, like Logan Stanley with the season he's having, there would certainly be some value there. Is it first round value? Is it second round? You know, that the market will obviously play that out. I am a little surprised that a guy like Logan Stanley, I know the Jets are banged up on the back end, but they do have an extra body here now. Ville Heinola is going to be a healthy scratch again tonight. If Logan Stanley is your best trade chip and the one that might fetch you the biggest return, it's a bit of a dangerous game, isn't it, to be putting him in the lineup this close to the trade deadline? Like, what happens if Logan Stanley gets injured tonight? And that's a risk you take, obviously. Does that mean, I guess one way of looking at it is, well, does that mean that the Jets aren't really close on a deal to move Logan Stanley? And if they were, would they be handling it a little bit differently? Lots can obviously change, over the next 72 hours, but it is interesting to hear a lot of talk out there that this is very much a buyer's market, not so much a seller's market. And so for teams like the Jets, there may be a lineup of other players that are potentially available, and they've kind of got to fall in line. But yeah, I'm a little surprised, guys, that and he would be the one that would jump out to me the most, like, because of just what we think a return could look like if Logan Stanley got moved. Some of the other pieces, like, let's just throw out a name. If there's a team that calls before Friday and says they want to trade for Tanner Pearson because they think he could be an upgrade on maybe what they have on their fourth line, or he's a better 13th forward, let's say, than what they have. I mean, are you getting much of a haul for him? Is it at the point where you'd sit him out? Probably not. So, the one, Stanley's for sure the big one to me. Another guy that I think we've talked a little bit about that I still think has some at least half decent trade value if the Jets wanted to go that route would be Eric Comrie. There's a lot of contenders out there that, are putting all their eggs in the basket of, say, a really good starting goaltender. If your starter, though, has maybe any kind of injury history or is a bit of an older guy, depending on what you have as your number 2 or even your number 3, guys, I know Eric Comrie's numbers are skewed a little bit because he had that long run as a starter when Connor Hrabchak was out, but I recently broke down his numbers of what they are this year purely in a backup role. Like when Connor Hrabchak has been healthy, Comrie's numbers are sensational. The bloat, if you will, that happened a little bit with his goals against and his save percentage came, when he was probably miscast as a starter, playing as much as he did. But if you're looking to upgrade in the backup department, or at worst number 3, and you're a legitimate contender, and you have any kind of concern about maybe your starter's health, I got to think a guy like Eric Comrie could make some sense. And, if you're the Jets and you could get something for him, even if it's a mid-round pick, you can always re-sign Eric Comrie in the summer. They've done that, 3 times before? So, that's something that could potentially, but Comrie's not starting tonight. Does he start Thursday? I don't know what the workload exactly is going to look like here, but the Logan Stanley is the one to me that I'm a little bit surprised. And I guess something could always change, right? Even between now and puck drop, like something starts to heat up. The Jets do have an extra defenseman. We were talking, Connor, you and I this morning at the morning skate. They don't have any extra forwards here right now, but the Moose are in town. So, they could quickly, I guess, solve that issue if they had to. So, yeah, that'll be something to watch. And especially as we get to Thursday, obviously teams have done that. Teams are Tyler Myers is missed 3 games in a row, and he still hasn't been traded. So that is a card that some teams like to play.
So all in all, Mike, when the dust settles on Friday, how do you think, or how aggressive do you think Jets GM Kevin Cheveldayoff will have been? It seems like the Jets, want to sell some assets, but maybe they're not. They don't appear. I don't see a lineup for Gus Nyquist, pending UFA, who's got 0 goals.
Well, and again, for a team like the Jets that has traded a lot of draft capital in recent years because they've been buyers, I think it's incumbent on them to be as aggressive as they possibly can in terms of selling here. They're 10 points out of a playoff spot. It's not happening. I know, and the players and the coaches, like, nobody's going to publicly stand up and wave the white flag, obviously, with 23 games left. But the idea that this is still potentially a playoff team, I mean, that ship has sailed. So they should be trying to recoup whatever draft capital they can get. And what they have 8 UFAs on their roster right now. That's a lot. That's a third of the team. If Friday's deadline comes and goes and they still have 8 or the majority of those 8 on the roster, like, it would be hard to spin that any other way than to say that that's a mishandling of your assets, and that's not good roster management. I suppose they could come out and say, well, we weren't going to completely give these players away for nothing, and if the offers coming in are next to nothing, then I guess you say, well, maybe we'll just hold on to the player. But to me, in this season, we've spent a lot of time talking about how, despite the Jets' struggles, there have not been a lot of opportunities for guys on the farm to come up, only when there's been injury. And now we're seeing a little bit, obviously, with, Heinola, Salamonson, Walker Dewars, the latest forward to come up. But to me, like, you could potentially solve a couple issues here. You could get some draft capital back, which is a good thing in my mind. But you also open some opportunities that otherwise aren't there, because for whatever reason, you've decided that if one of these veterans, is healthy, that no matter what they're doing or not doing on the ice, they're essentially entitled to that spot. And I'm talking about guys like Nyquist, who really have done nothing to earn that spot, but for whatever reason, they haven't wanted to waive him. So he's taking up a spot that could go to a player. Like, if you can move out some of those guys, now you've at least created some hope down on the farm. Maybe inject a little bit of life into a group that certainly could use any signs of life down the stretch, and get a little bit of a glimpse of the future, which is going to be important, because, again, even if you're not trading these 8 UFAs, are you re-signing any of them by the summer? And if you're not, who's taking their spots next season? You still have to ice a full lineup. The seasons keep moving. Time keeps churning along here. So you've got to get, if you can, as much of a read on maybe what some of the things you have in your system, which would then help you make your assessments in the summertime of what you might need to do. So, yeah, I mean, I think, Remo, they should be, if they could move all 8 guys, that would be terrific. I don't think they can, and I don't think they will. I think there's a number of guys that would be virtually impossible to move. But, at this point, it should be a fire sale. The problem is it does take 2 to tango, and if you're not getting the calls, and the Jets, they should not be attaching sweeteners. Like, the Jets are not in a position to be adding draft picks or prospects for a team to take on. They don't have to clear. They're not trying to clear space so they can take a run at Robert Thomas or something, right? Like, obviously you don't want to end up hurting yourself in the process of trying to help yourself. But yeah, if there's any takers for any of their UFAs, Absolutely. They should be listening. And you know what? If even if the price is, even if the return is a 6th or 7th round draft pick, you're not re-signing the player anyways, that's a lottery ticket that you don't otherwise have, right?
Yeah, I'm fully with you that even a 6th round pick and a lottery ticket, Kieran Walton's a 6th round pick playing pretty good in the O, but and even the final 20 games is a scenario in which the Winnipeg Jets can use that roster spot for a younger player. Mike, you bring up the pending UFAs. I'm curious. We talked going into trade deadline week, and obviously their injuries have changed things about Niederreiter and Nemesnikov.
Yeah.
But what do you think is in store for Morgan Barron? Do you think he remains a Winnipeg Jet through the deadline? I have to think there would be some interest given his cap hit and the extra year of term and the fact that he's 6'4", fast player, scored some goals this year. What do you think that there's a chance that Morgan Barron, the Jets might receive some calls on him and he could be on the move, or do you think he stays?
I think they would receive some calls on him, but at some point, if you're the Jets, I think, again, this is a team that is not going into a full-blown rebuild. Not while they have Scheifele and Hellebuck and Connor and Morrissey, and Lowry, in their primes or kind of on the tail end of their primes. So Morgan Barron is a guy that, yes, he's only got one more year, and then you're going to have to decide, hey, what's happening? Are you re-signing him? Is he looking elsewhere? But to me, Morgan Barron should be, he's a part of the future, or the part of the present, but he also should be a part of the future. He's the kind of player that would not easily be replaced. And, maybe the numbers recently for him haven't been what he'd like and what the team would like. But again, a game like the other day just shows off the toolbox that he has. Mm-hmm. And I do think there's more there to tap into. I continue to be a little befuddled at the fact that he's essentially relegated to the 4th line here. And,
me too.
Whether it's as a winger, I wouldn't mind seeing him take a few shifts with, if you're going to keep Connor and Scheifele together, what does that look like? Or, whatever. There's different ways I think you can utilize them, and there kind of aren't, and it's puzzling to say the least. And I imagine it's got to be frustrating for him. So yeah, I think they would get calls. I do think though, if you're the Jets, he's a piece. Look, we're talking about the 8 UFAs, and probably all those guys are gone. Niederreiter and Nemesnikov, even if you're not moving them at this deadline, they've both got just one more year left. They're going to be gone. And you're talking about your core, which is getting older. Morgan Barron is a guy I'd be trying to find a way to make sure that he's around for the long run. And because again, his combination of speed and size and the hands that we've seen and what he can do on the PK, and that he can play center and wing up and down your lineup, that is not an easily replaceable player. And so, to me, I guess if somebody called and just blew the doors off with an offer, you'd have to listen. But I don't know. I'd lean way more heavily on the side of keeping this player around. But and because again, you're going to need bodies and guys that you can rely on, and I think he's proven to be one of those players for sure.
Yeah, you say proven to be. It seems like the Jets don't really see it that way, as you mentioned on the 4th line. When he's one of the faster players on the team, not getting overtime ice time, ahead of certain other players. Going back to Sunday's game, it was Scott Arniel who was asked about the record in overtime, which has been pretty bad this year, as we talked all day yesterday. 3-10 after regulation. He mentioned personnel. What did you think that he meant? Is he talking about, well, you've had a lot of injuries, or was it more about roster construction?
Well, the one big personnel, the player that they don't have this year that they could throw it in 3-on-3 in the past, was Nikolai Ehlers. Obviously, if we're talking about the last couple games, yeah, they don't have Josh Morrissey. That very much changes the way deployment in overtime looks. It's why you're seeing guys like Hayden Fleury, take a shift. I mean, I wonder, again, you talk about usage of players and guys like Salamonson and Villy when he was in the lineup, like those guys have played overtime this year with the Moose and been really good at it. Are they better options than a Dylan DeMello or a Hayden Fleury? And I think they probably are, but for whatever reason, guys, there seems to be this pecking order that exists, where it's like deference to the seniority in a way. And that's probably not the best way to run a hockey team, to put it mildly. And so when you're seeing guys like Gus Nyquist take an overtime shift, again, over a guy like Morgan Barron, and like their seasons couldn't be any more different in terms of what they've been able to produce. It does boggle the mind for sure. So I wonder, some of that commentary from Scott Arniel, some might take it as a shot towards the GM. You haven't given me the players here that I want. I don't take it that way so much. I mean, I think some of it was frustration on certainly injuries that they've had lately, especially to a Josh Morrissey. And we know what Josh can do in 3-on-3 overtime. And he's so tied to Connor and Scheifele, like that trio and what they've done. I mean, they single-handedly won a bunch of overtime games just a year ago. So that doesn't explain the whole season of overtime. I mean, I think there's got to be some frustration Scott Arniel has with himself. And you wonder, guys, sometimes, like, there's been stories done on how overtime strategy has evolved and changed, and how teams are maybe playing it a little differently than they used to. You wonder if the Jets are failed to adapt to that, right? If they're still going into overtime with the same mentality that led to a lot of success, but a lot of teams who didn't enjoy the same success they had went, well, wait a minute, we got to find a bit of a different way to approach this. The Jets just kind of went into it thinking, well, we'll just keep doing what we're doing. It's working. And they've kind of been left on the sidelines a bit. But yeah, I mean, when you look at the difference between a playoff spot and not, right? Like that's a huge part of it. Jets are 10 out right now. But, they win a few of those games in overtime. It's a much different narrative here as we head into the trade deadline.
Yeah, Mike, for sure. One thing that I think is maybe a bigger picture, maybe off-season type discussion, especially with where the Winnipeg Jets are in their season and the fact that, Scott Arniel is still the head coach. I think it is an off-season discussion. But where are you at on Scott Arniel as a head coach? He's had one awesome season and one down season as the head coach. Where do you think the organization is at on Scott Arniel as the head coach? Because I don't know, are they going to treat this as a mulligan? You had a good year, you had one off year, third year is kind of the prove it year going into next season. Where do you think the organization stands on Scott Arniel as we wind towards the trade deadline here and then to the end of the season?
Well, put it this way, as long as the organization still feels that Kevin Cheveldayoff is the GM and the right person to lead the team, and I have no reason to believe that they think otherwise, I'd be surprised if we saw a coaching change. And I do tend to lean more towards how you phrase it, Connor, that, they would view this more as that they think this is the outlier, not last season. Mm-hmm. And, he'd get another year here, kind of the rubber match, if you will, of these, a third season to show that, that this was the exception, not the new norm. The other thing is, like, Kevin Cheveldayoff's, obviously this is what, his fifth coach. Not all of them. He hasn't had full control. Paul Maurice abruptly resigned. Obviously Dave Lowry was the interim. Rick Bowness then, announced his resignation or retirement. So, but this is the fifth different coach, Claude Noel, Paul Maurice, Dave Lowry, Rick Bowness. Is Kevin Cheveldayoff bringing in a sixth coach like that? That would be, and so I think there's a connection there. I think there's certainly a loyalty and a bond between Arneil and the organization. Does that mean that everything he's done this year has been perfect? Well, no, absolutely not. And, I think when we're talking about players that have struggled at times, whether it's with decision-making or things they've done on the ice, the coaches they're part of that as well, right? And so for sure, it's more than fair game to question some of the decisions Scott Arneil has made, both within games and with roster construction. And, I think we've seen at times very visible signs of how frustrating this has been for Scott Arneil. Because let's face it, the bar got raised really high a year ago, about as high as you can raise it. They won the President's Trophy. And for them to now fall so short of that bar, the contrast is jarring. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it wouldn't happen this summer, but I'd be in the category of quite surprised if there was a coaching change.
Interesting, Mike, as we look ahead towards the deadline and, even towards next season at this point. I mean, is there a path, that for the Winnipeg Jets to return to the playoffs? I mean, how do you see it shaking out leading from here to the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think any time you have Connor Hrabchak, as long as he's still as close to peak Connor Hrabchak, I think there is a path, because goaltending is such a huge part of it. The team you just look at how many 1-goal games they've lost this year, right? It'd be one thing if they're getting their doors blown off. They're not. They've been right there in a lot of games. And, I think there is, now it's not going to be an easy path for sure. And I think this year is going to provide a lot of lessons on some things that clearly didn't work. This team got older and slower last summer in a league that's getting younger and faster. And they're going to see a third straight team tonight, guys, that's pretty young and fast and skilled. And that's kind of the way the league is going. Now, can the Jets just magically get younger and faster overnight? Not necessarily, but again, a lot of these guys, these contracts that are going to be off the books, who steps in to fill them? Are there guys within the system right now that are doing that? Are there players they go target this summer in free agency, which again is always going to be a challenge for Winnipeg? Are there trades to be made, excuse me, where they can fill some of those holes? But I do think, with this core, and let's face it, guys, like Morrissey, Connor, Scheifele, I'll throw Velarde in there as well. They're all having really good seasons. Hrabchak not to his usual high standards, but are those guys going to start to slow down? Velarde would be the exception. He's still young, but are you getting, can you expect an even better season from Scheifele next year? Probably not. But if those guys if your best players are still performing at a pretty high level, it's more important than ever to now find the pieces to build around them. The challenge is going to be how you do that, because there's clearly not been a lot of guys, at least this season, on the Moose that have forced the Jets to create openings for them. And so whether we're talking about a Lambert or a Chibrikov or a Ford or a Yager or a Barlow, like some of these young players, and we could have a whole debate about whether their development is being handled properly on the Moose and why it seems like so many guys are not necessarily trending in the right direction. But the fact is, if you don't have those guys kind of knocking at the door, and you're going to have all these openings on your roster, who's filling them and how are you filling them? The Jets are not overnight going to become this free agent haven. We're not magically going to sprout palm trees and become a no-tax state and become Florida or Texas or whatever. So the challenges remain. In some ways, they might get even bigger because the Jets, they also won't have the fact, hey, we're the President's Trophy winners, and come play with the Hart Trophy winner and the Vezina Trophy winner. So there's a lot of work ahead, clearly. And, that's why I think what happens in these next few days will give us a bit better idea of maybe what, and we're going to hear from Kevin Cheveldayoff on Friday as well, guys. And it will be interesting to hear what he has to say about kind of the game plan for the final 20 of this year, but then even looking further ahead to what's going to be a very important summer for this organization.
Yes, will be very interesting indeed how they'll move forward from this disappointing 2025-26 season, but we still have plenty of games to go, including Jets, Blackhawks tonight, as game 1 of this 8-game homestand. Mike, so great having you on the show today, hearing your thoughts. Hopefully we can have you on Friday for our trade deadline mega stream, whatever we want to call it, but appreciate you taking the time and looking forward to reading your latest with Luke Shen in the Winnipeg Free Press.
Yeah, I had an interesting one-on-one with Luke following the morning skate. He was candid as ever. He's one of the guys that could very much be on the move, and he actually had quite a bit to say about that. So I'll be writing that up this afternoon. And yeah, just to throw it out there, guys, of the 8, if I just had to predict right now, we can revisit this on Friday to see if I was off. I'm going to go ahead and predict that 2 of the 8 UFAs are gone after Friday, and 6 are still here.
Which 2? Stanley and Shen?
Stanley and Shen would be the 2 that I absolutely think are gone. Yes. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see
the Gustav Nyquist ride continues.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. I mean,
all right.
I think a lot of Jets fans will be disappointed if it's just 2. I don't know if there's any takers out there for like 6 or 7 or 8. That seems pretty far fetched, but I'll put it this way. I'll start the over under at 2. I'll take 2 on the nose, and then we'll sort of go from there.
All right. We'll hold you to that one, Mike. Thanks again for joining us today. There is Mike McIntyre, Winnipeg Free Press. Check that out on Mike McIntyre, WPG on X. We do have a game tonight, Chicago Blackhawks in town. Ben Pope, Chicago Sun-Times, coming up next with a view from what we can expect to see from the visitors. But first, here's Huss.
Got to thank Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery. Continue to get just always getting great comments from our listeners and customers that have found Manitoba Battery through WST. Shopping local, beating the pants off the big box stores and really anywhere else you're going to get batteries. And of course, the best in service. They'll put it in for you. They'll give you a free battery test if you're wondering if you need a new one. And right now, you want to get through this winter for car and truck batteries. But as we get into boats and ATVs and, of course, sleds, Manitoba Battery has it all. 2 Winnipeg locations, Logan Avenue, Dovercourt Drive out on the south side. And, of course, you can also order online. They do deliver anywhere inside the perimeter of the city of Winnipeg. You can order online today at manitobabattery.com. Cleanline is your one-stop shop with over 40 years of experience for the best in Winnipeg residential and commercial plumbing, heating, and electrical services. And much like the Captain Adam Lowry, they've got you covered 24/7 with emergency services. Remember the number, 204-500-2001 for Cleanline Plumbing, Heating, Electrical for all your needs, residential, commercial, and when you're in a jam. The gang at BP is ready to welcome Jet fans back. Head to your local BP Jets Pick a Player contest for all Winnipeg Jet games. And, of course, those ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and more. Staying at home, you can always get the great taste of BP by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. And got to shout out our friends at Royal. What a run they had with the Olympic Games. Now we look ahead to the Stanley Cup playoffs, of course, and baseball season. Tons of new Jays and MLB gear coming in by the day. And as everyone's getting ready to maybe get out of town in and around spring break, don't forget Royal's amazing snowboard department with the best in deals on boots, bindings, decks, you name it. They've got it with the experts to help you get the right fit before you hit the slopes. It's all waiting for you at Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Instagram at the latest merchandise drops and sale information. Let's give a big cheers to our friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, pleased to be joined now by Ben Pope, Chicago Sun-Times. Ben, welcome to Winnipeg here for Jets Blackhawks at the end of a couple-game road trip.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a little chilly, as we were just discussing, but always happy to be here.
Have to ask, the Winnipeg Jets and Chicago Blackhawks, 1 point separates them in the standings. For the Jets, very disappointing season after the President's Trophy last year. But for Chicago, it seems like this rebuild taking a bit longer than maybe you thought when it started at the end of their Stanley Cup window.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. If they had started sooner, certainly you'd expect them to be ahead of where they are now, but there were the Stan Bowman kind of waffling back and forth years for a while, so it wasn't really until 2022 that this started. Certainly it's been a long 4 years with a lot of losing in that span, but it's not like anything has gone awry, really, with the rebuild. It's more that it just takes a really long time for players to go from drafted to in the NHL to succeeding in the NHL. I don't know if Kyle Davidson, expected exactly this timeline. He called it a 3 to 5 year rebuild when he started it in 2022, and 4 years in now. It kind of depends on what you define as the end of the rebuild. But it's really where, this is a very young team, younger than they've been in a while, where it was more just kind of those veteran placeholders the past few years. And they have been a bit more competitive this year, and next year they're going to be an insanely young team, like one of the youngest teams I've ever seen in the salary cap era. So it'll be really interesting how the young guys do then. But it's not like they've flamed out or really had any huge setbacks so far. It's a slow process.
And Ben, obviously the core piece of this rebuild is Connor Bedard, and his development into a superstar in the National Hockey League is going to be the biggest thing that maybe leapfrogs the Blackhawks out of the basement of the NHL and into the playoffs and all of those things. A lot of people wanted him on Team Canada this year, and then he had the injury, came back from the injury, maybe a little bit slower. How would you define Connor Bedard's season so far?
Well, it's certainly been a big step forward. I mean, I think last year was a bit disappointing that it wasn't that much of a step forward from his rookie year. This year, he definitely has made that leap. The injury, disrupted it, and he was a little bit slow. I don't think he was quite 100% coming back from that in January. But if you look at his play the first 2 months of the season up until the injury on December 12th, and then his play also the past week, since the Olympic break, coming back at 100%. I mean, he's been pretty dominant. He's been one of the better players in the league, and he's still only 21. So it's 20, I think, actually. So it's he's living up to expectations completely as the guy that they can build this team around long term. He's been excellent coming out of the break, as I mentioned. Scored in Nashville, scored in Colorado, has tons of chances in all 3 games, has been pretty much single-handedly leading the offense. Depth scoring is still a big weakness for this team, even though they did get a bit of that in their win Sunday in Utah. But Bedard is completely holding up his end of the bargain and looks like he's going to be easily the kind of superstar that they were counting on.
And we have the trade deadline coming up, on Friday. Chicago already active trading Connor Murphy yesterday. The Blackhawks seem to be in a good situation here with their draft picks. 2 first-round picks this year, 3 second-round picks this year, and 2 second-round picks for the next 2 years. You expect the Blackhawks to be more active ahead of Friday. And what did you think of the return for Connor Murphy?
Yeah, getting a second-round pick for Murphy seemed like kind of the best realistic scenario, where if someone offered a second-round pick, they would take it. And a familiar guy in Stan Bowman, who originally brought Murphy to Chicago, was the one to offer that up. Not too surprising, really, on anything there. The Hawks are trying to move out pending UFAs to make room for prospects coming in. They want to get Sam Rinzel and Artyom Levshunov both in the lineup consistently on defense, and trading Murphy allows them to do that. They also are probably going to try to move out a forward or two because they want to get Anton Frondell, once this season in Sweden ends, over to the NHL and get more time for Nick Lardis and also potentially Sasha Boisvert at Boston University. So they need to clear up some NHL roster spots, and they'll likely do that by trading Jason Dickinson. I talked to him today, and he seems to realize that it's likely coming, and potentially Ilya Mikheyev as well, especially if they're not able to work out a contract with him. I think they would certainly be interested in keeping him alternatively. So I think the Hawks have probably at least one move still coming this week. And that's kind of certainly been familiar the past few years that they've been shipping out guys at the deadline. But at this point, it's not so much about accumulating picks. Not that they're, trying to not do that, but it's more about opening up those roster spots in the present to get the prospects into the NHL now. And they're happy with those picks being further away. Like, it's a 2028 pick they got from Edmonton. And the idea with that is they already have just so many prospects right now, and quite a few picks as well, that if they can get it further down the road, they're more spaced out and just in terms of the timeline of their prospect pool, or they could then flip those picks a few years from now at the deadline or something, if they're shifted into contender mode and trying to buy at that time. Those picks would have fixed value, whereas if it was a 2026 pick and you used it on a prospect, that prospect's value could change quite a bit in the next 2 years.
You brought up the fact that they move Connor Murphy out in hopes of getting, Rinzel and Levshunov into the lineup more often. I'm curious about Artyom Levshunov, the big right shot defenseman, second overall pick in the 2024 draft, playing in his first full extended grind of a schedule NHL season, was taken ahead of Beckett Seneca, Ivan Demidov, a pick that was maybe controversial at the time. How would you describe Levshunov's first full NHL first full NHL season so far?
Well, he definitely is kind of under a lot of scrutiny and kind of a lightning rod sometimes from the fan base, who wishes they had picked Demidov instead. From my perspective, I think he's been about what I thought he would be, which is a very chaotic defenseman that has a lot of raw tools and has had flashes where he looked great. Around New Year's, for example, he had a stretch of 5 or 6 games where he was playing extremely well. Solid defensively, creating a ton of offense. And then there have also been some really low lows. A game in Pittsburgh in late January, it looked like he had forgotten what position he was playing. Like it was a disastrous night for him. That led to him being removed from the lineup for a bit as the Hawks tried to kind of reset some of his foundational skills. And that got a lot of attention from the fan base that, oh man, we have to totally recreate our number 2 overall pick. What are we doing here? But I think that's just kind of the way it goes for defensemen who are young in the NHL. There's ups and downs. It takes longer for them to develop than forwards. And especially for Levshunov, a guy who coming in was more raw than a typical top 5 pick, hadn't played high-level hockey in Belarus until just a few years before he was drafted, still has a language barrier and also just kind of has a bit of a chaotic game. It made sense that it would be this way, and I think he's been roughly what I expected. It's going to take him several years, I think, to reach anywhere close to his ceiling and for the Hawks to really find out how good he can be. But I haven't seen anything that says he's definitely not going to achieve that.
This is the first full season for Jeff Blashill as head coach for the Chicago Blackhawks. What have you seen from him so far this year?
I think Blashill's done a fairly good job. I think the first couple months of the season in particular were very impressive, where he was kind of pushing all the right buttons. Certainly some of the young guys have hit a little bit of a wall, and some of the kind of secondary production has dried up. Injuries have had a factor. Spencer Knight's kind of come back to earth a bit, even though he's still been very solid in net. So the initial, tremendous excitement has faded a little bit, but I think it's still been, in general, a pretty good first year for Blashill, who seems to have learned from his prior stint in Detroit, learned from his time as an assistant under John Cooper, who is a very close friend of his. Definitely brings more of an aura of authority to this team that the past few head coaches didn't have. Like, you can tell that he's not a first-time coach, that he does know what he's doing. One of the big things he's tried to do is maintain more consistency in the lines and in the lineup than Luke Richardson did. That was a big thing that Richardson was criticized for last year, and Colliton has really stuck with his trios extensively. Lately, he's kept Ryan Green and Andrei Burakovsky up on the first line with Connor Bedard, and a lot of fans have grown frustrated with that. Burakovsky has 1 point in his last 15 or 16 games, and he's still in the first line. But that's just kind of how Blashill operates. Like, he finds a trio that he likes, and he sticks with it through the highs and lows instead of, putting things in a blender every game or two. It'll be interesting to see if that pays off, or eventually if he does have to pivot his strategy with who he's playing with Bedard. But that's kind of been his approach, and it's been interesting to see.
One question that has been asked in chat here by Peg City Scott, and it's something that I'm curious in. I asked you about Connor Bedard earlier. He's a pending RFA. What does that next deal look like?
Yeah, that's certainly the big question. From what I've heard, there haven't really been many negotiations during the season. That's going to be an after the season thing. There's really no question that it's going to get signed. Bedard's made it very clear he's committed to the Hawks long term. It's just a matter of what the deal ends up being financially. It's going to be a huge number no matter what, undeniably, but how big that number is will be interesting. Is it going to be 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 million? It could be anywhere in that range. How he plays the last month or so here will have a slight effect, but as I was saying earlier, he's already proven to be fully that franchise cornerstone. So the Hawks are going to ultimately give him whatever it takes to get him to sign. It's just a matter of how much is he going to ask for? Is he willing to take a slight discount to give them more space to sign other guys the next few years? Those will be the kind of questions they have to work out, but I don't get the sense those negotiations will be hostile or too difficult. I think it'll be more them working together to figure out the best number that works for the team and the player.
Yes, will be certainly interesting to see, and I'm looking forward to tonight's game, Jets Blackhawks, Canada Life Center. Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Hopefully we can have you again on the program in the future.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. There he is, Ben Pope, Chicago Sun-Times. Follow him on X at Ben Pope CST for updates. We're winding down the show, but we still got a little bit more to discuss, Connor and I. We'll get to that, but first, here's Huss.
I do want to thank our friends at the HSC Foundation and remind you all that right now the Fund a Need campaign is well underway. This is so important to help with the spinal surgery department. There's obviously a big wait. They're looking to raise $425,000, and every one of your donations will be matched. So it will be doubled. Of course, you'll get a tax receipt for it. They're looking to get some new surgical equipment that will allow 200 more spine surgeries and 400 more joint replacement surgeries a year. So if you go to Health Sciences Center Foundation, to the Fund a Need campaign, and help us raise $425,000, and everything is matched by the Manitoba Spine Program. And hey, making our finishing touches with our winner to get out to Aikens Lake this year. Don't forget, folks, if you're looking for a world-class fly-in fishing experience here in the province, where you can be on the water in less than a couple hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens Lake is the spot. World-class fishing and even more world-class hospitality from the Terren family and the Aikens team. Booking now throughout the summer, over 75% full. So Check it out now at aikenslake.com and get your bookings. And if you are looking for a great summer job for you students out there, go to aikenslake.com and inquire as well about opportunities for the upcoming year.
Okay.
There's us. Be back later on in the week. Again, big trade deadline show Friday, starting at 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. Hopefully you have some trades. I got to be honest, though, Connor. The last couple of years, GMs have smartened up, made trades early. No trades during this show. It seems like the rumors, though, flying out and about out there in the universe.
Yeah, no kidding. We just got another one here. We brought up the Robert Thomas to Buffalo one earlier that Dreger said talks are intensifying. Stefan Rosner of NHL.com saying there are serious discussions happening between the Islanders and the Canucks. Been told it's surrounding Connor Garland, but also told that it could be Connor Garland plus. And then in a later tweet said that he hears that Tyler Myers has also been discussed in that deal. So very interesting stuff. I mean, the Islanders kind of playing with house money here this season where they did not think they'd be in this spot, but Matthew Schaefer has completely changed the trajectory of their franchise, and they are fighting for a home ice advantage in the standings right now with the Pittsburgh Penguins in the Metropolitan Division. So Connor Garland would be a really nice ad for that group. If anything, they need some ads up front because on the blue end, they've got Schaefer, Pelech, Pulak. They went out and got Carson Soucy a month and a half, 2 months ago. So a Connor Garland ad does make a lot of sense for them. And again, Matthew Schaefer is 18. If he's an Islander for his whole career, you might have 20 years of an elite left shot top pairing defenseman here to work with. So Connor Garland, a guy that has term on his deal as well. That's a deal that I'd be in on if I'm the Islanders. I like that.
Yes. So the Vancouver's a team that could be pretty active, as you know, they traded Quinn Hughes earlier this year, and they just had a pretty brutal loss to Dallas last night. Vancouver doing kind of looking at, are they doing it full tear down? We'll see Elias Pettersson move. That's a name that's on there. Brock Besser making jokes like it's not a trade deadline without me being in the rumor mill. Jake DeBrusk as well. Players don't want to be part of a rebuild, and those guys, two of those guys, DeBrusk and Besser, just recently signed long-term deals with Vancouver. And for a team that showed so much promise a couple of years ago with Demko, Pettersson, and Quinn Hughes, JT Miller, Bo Horvat at one time, it's crazy how far this team has fallen. But Connor, it is Tuesday night, traditionally a very heavy schedule night, and during this compressed post-Olympic break, number of games tonight. I don't know if there's a game that you've got your eye on as you look towards the cool bet lines, but we can talk about the game that we're focusing on here with the Winnipeg Jets. Big home favorites, first game after a long road trip, minus 157. I think I sat with you last time these two teams played, and the Jets played at Canada Life Center. Last time they played was in Chicago for Jonathan Toews' return, and the Jets were shut out. But the Jets minus 157 favorites. If you're looking for a score, I mean, Kyle Connor's been pretty solid since returning. He's the biggest favorite at plus 125. Mark Scheifele plus 154. Connor Bedard plus 160. And if you want to go down the list, Gabriel Velarde plus 190. Cole Perfetti plus 225. And there's Logan Stanley. Still playing power play one, Connor. He's got the shot, plus 710. It's got to hit one of these games, right?
A Logan Stanley goal on trade deadline week would be awesome. Yeah, days before the deadline. Hey, GMs across the league, take a look at this guy. Firing home a clapper on the power play. That would be awesome. But yeah, it's not often that you see a team, that's 28th in the standings playing the 27th team in the standings, and the Jets are an almost minus 60 home favorite here. But Connor Hellebuyck starting is a big reason for that. The Jets starting an 8-game homestand. It is Spencer Knight for the Hawks tonight, Remo, which I think me and you might have done the Jonathan Toews game post-game. Spencer Knight was awesome in that game. So it is going to be very interesting to see if the Jets can get to Spencer Knight tonight. The goal scorers, Connor Bedard, watch for him. He's been on a tear as of late, as we heard from Ben, slow out of the injury, but has been on fire as of late. Cole Perfetti for the Winnipeg Jets has looked really good coming out of the break, looked great going into the break too, minus 133 to get a point in this one. But yeah, the goaltenders, a very interesting matchup here tonight. Spencer Knight, a younger player that they went out and got maybe to be their goaltender for the foreseeable future, to bring them out of this rebuild. And he's been great this season with the stats on the screen here. 908 save percentage, 2.62 goals against average, and 10.2 goals saved above expected, a few of which came in that game against the Winnipeg Jets on January 19th for sure. But it's going to be an interesting one, Remo, as the Jets take on the Hawks. And a guy like Connor Bedard, to me, is worth the price of admission. He's a very fun player to watch.
Yeah, you see that release, and it's funny, a lot of talk about Connor Bedard not being on Team Canada. I did see the highlight of him scoring from distance on Connor Hrabchak. Was it this past season or before? But hard
Last
not
season,
to think about this gold medal game every time. Connor,
I don't know about it tonight.
I don't know how
they're gonna honor them.
Yeah, right? I don't know how long it's gonna take for me to watch Winnipeg Jets game with Connor Hrabchak in net and not think about him making that Devon Taves save, or stoning McDavid and Celebrini on breakaways, or Nathan McKinnon missing that empty net. It's going to be tough. Yeah. Still not over it. And yes, they will be honoring. I think they will. I assume they did it in Toronto, honored their Olympians. Isn't that the thing that you do when you're in game production?
Yeah, and their guy was the stud, the superstar, Connor Hrabchak. Like there's no way they don't. Yeah, so I'm expecting that
for the country that beat the home country of the team.
Yeah,
that he plays in. Interesting. Well, here, there are a number of games on the schedule. We can go through some of these. Pittsburgh at Boston. How about the Golden Knights in Buffalo? Buffalo's big favorite there, minus 143. Nashville, what are they going to do before the deadline? Will Ryan O'Reilly be on the move? Steven Stamkos. They're plus 118 underdogs in Columbus. Panthers and the Devils, two teams having very disappointing years. Saw some reports about the Devils looking to move on from some of their defensemen. But Panthers, slight favorite, minus 115. Utah, that was Seattle yesterday. Utah in Washington. Washington favorite, minus 123. Dallas coming off a big win over Vancouver, going into Calgary, minus 135 favorite. Edmonton hosting Ottawa. Edmonton with Connor Murphy now, minus 116. Minnesota, a home dog to Tampa. I guess Tampa's got the standard Minnesota and then come here. But Tampa's the road favorite there, minus 139. Colorado had a big one yesterday against LA. They're minus 147 favorites in Anaheim. And Montreal, minus 135 favorites in San Jose. Any game here in particular that you've got your eye on?
Remo, I don't know if you agree or not, but I could talk about every single one of these games because we don't have a single game. Like, what's the biggest favorite on the board tonight? Is it the Jets?
Oh, man.
Minus 157? The lines, I think
you're right.
The balance of competition on the slate tonight is awesome. I mean,
wow.
Usually you see at least one minus 200 or bigger favorite, but the Jets are the biggest favorite of the night, minus 157. And that's not even like a very big line. And you go down, all four of these games at the bottom, I will be keeping an eye on once I get home from this Jets game. Ottawa, Edmonton. Edmonton's in the second wild card right now. The playoffs started today. They'll be playing Colorado in the first round. I always just kind of think that Edmonton's going to turn it around. I still believe they will. I still believe they're probably, them and Colorado are the favorites to come out of the West. But man, time is kind of ticking here and they haven't looked great as of late. So I'll be keeping an eye on Edmonton in the month of March here. Tampa and Minnesota, two of the best teams in the league. Minnesota obviously plays in the Central and is up near the top of the league standings, not just the Central standings. Tampa Bay's a wagon. They're, to me, the clear favorite in the East to represent the East in the Stanley Cup final. Colorado, Anaheim, there's going to be a ton of speed in that game for sure. Anaheim, we just saw, they play that up-tempo style, and I think Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar can oblige to a up-tempo style if they feel like it. And then Canadiens, Sharks, again, two very young teams. The Canadiens obviously in kind of that Eastern Conference playoff like picture. They're going to make the playoffs, it looks like, and they're looking to take a big step with their young core. The Sharks not quite in the playoffs, but looking to fight to get to the playoff line. And Celebrini against Hudson, some of the best young stars in the league are in that game too. So I don't know, Remo, for a Tuesday night, this is one of the better slates of the season, just because of how like close in perceived odds all of these games are. I mean, like I said a few times, Jets are the biggest favorite of the night at -157. That's an extremely short line to be the biggest favorite of the night.
Yeah, Leslie Mitchnick in chat asking, how are the Jets the biggest favorite of the night? Have they not watched the Jets?
Good question.
They are here. What are they in the standings? 26th of 32 teams? 27th, sorry. Of 32, the biggest favorite of the night.
Yeah, I'll say like they're still the biggest favorite of the night tonight. Like they're -157 favorite, all this stuff. Like there's been little to no value on Jets ML if you've been betting that this season, because coming into the season they're viewed as a playoff team. So their odds game in and game out reflect that of like a playoff team, and they've lost a ton of games, as we know. So if you've been betting Jets ML this year, probably hasn't gone your way, because there just isn't value there to begin with, and then they're just not even winning the games either.
Yeah, I mean, last year, if you were betting Jets,
would have been great.
You're probably raking, as they won just about every game, and we had such a great time with our Winnipeg Sports Talk Game of the Month, where we went 6-0. Not quite this year. We'll see how they go Thursday against Tampa. WinnipegJets.com/WST for tickets to that. And we did have our WBC preview yesterday. Check that out at the end of the show. Canada is playing the Blue Jays this afternoon. I haven't been keeping tabs on that one. I did see they named Josh Naylor of the Seattle Mariners. You may remember him from the ALCS. He's a very good player for Seattle then. He's the captain of Canada. So very excited for WBC. You know, the Brier going on as well. So a number of sports this time of year, Connor, but all focus here on the NHL trade deadline and tonight's Winnipeg Jets game against the Chicago Blackhawks. Well, it's been a fun one, Connor. We didn't even get to our time zone takes as we ended the show yesterday. Were you listening? BC?
I was.
BC switching to, they're going rogue. They're going daylight only. So they're switching the clocks forward in March and not switching them back. So get ready for the Canucks will technically be in the Mountain time zone from November to March. Their games will be starting a bit earlier, and then the takes are flying on time zones, Connor.
The takes are flying. The most controversial topic on the show. Look, I'm happy because these games are now at 8, right? So if there's for us, I mean, these games are at 8 when they're in Vancouver. So if it's a weeknight Vancouver game, like it was a week ago on Wednesday, we get that extra hour, which I think is crucial for the late window. The 9 p.m. games are tough. They're very tough. So to make it 8, I think is a good step forward. This doesn't affect my life. I don't live in BC, but the way it does affect my life is when the Winnipeg Jets play the Canucks. And I'm happy about 8 p.m. puck drops instead of 9. There's my take.
I'm the opposite. I like the late
the
games.
later the better.
Yeah, I like we have this grouping of late teams. I don't like. I guess there's only a couple teams in the middle now that Arizona left, and you have
it's Colorado,
right? Edmonton, Calgary. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is good. As far as everyone's saying, Winnipeg should follow suit. I said as long as we have, the East games starting at 6 and the West games starting at 9, I'm good with whatever needs to happen for that to continue. And we get the long summers. I'm good with that. So we will stay tuned.
Don't we spring forward this weekend?
Yes, it is this weekend. And
so
here's my take.
Lots of time zone takes this week on the show.
I've never posted the Twitter meme on X of the guy like standing up and making an announcement. I know you've done that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love that one.
What's that called? Does that thing have a name?
I don't know. I honestly.
What's that even from?
Half of my memes. Dude, half of my memes, I just like they're on Twitter and it's just that's what it is. So I'm here. Let me find it.
I have it's from Norman Rockwell's freedom of speech. I don't know what that is,
There you
but
go.
you see this picture all the time. This guy standing
Yes.
up. Here's mine. I like the time zone the way it is. I don't care about changing the clock. Doesn't bother me. Just keep it the way it is. Obviously, they decided it to be this way for a reason. I don't know what it is. I'm not a scientist, but it's fine. I don't care. We don't need to change anything. Keep the East games at 6 and the West games at 9 when you're in the Central Time Zone. That's all I ask. Keep NFL games starting at noon. That's fine. I don't want to have 1 p.m. starts. We're in the perfect time zone in the Central. Let's not ruin it. And I don't want to be rogue. I don't want to be rogue and be completely different when everyone else. I don't want to be the one changing when everyone else is staying the same. Anyways.
Wow. No, I like it. I like it. Whip out the hot takes. I love it. I will say this. As someone who was in Vancouver last week and occasionally tuning into hockey games, that time zone is terrible for watching hockey.
But I don't live there.
The game, I'm there, and it was the day after the Jets game. It was Thursday, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna turn on some hockey. It was 4:00. The first game started.
Yes,
it's 4:00. Like when the Canucks play the Rangers, and people who work a 9 to 5, are they still at work when the puck drops?
It's crazy.
Like that's insane. That's insane. And the last game of the night, like a 9:30 Central puck drop, is a 7:30 in Vancouver. So it's like 10 o'clock and there's no hockey to watch. I'm like, this sucks. This absolutely sucks.
So you
Central's
just go to
the best for.
Yeah. So
you just go to bed.
There's no late games on? Yeah. So you just go to bed. Exactly.
None.
I was up late last night watching LA, Colorado. Colorado scored a last second goal. Seattle, Carolina, nice game there. Seattle won that one. They were pumped about beating the top team in the East. So time zones are important in how they affect sports watching. So we'll see what happens. Vancouver, BC, did they start a trend in Canada, or are they going to be on an island? Something to watch out for.
And I'll say this too, like the late games used to be brutal because LA has kind of always, to me, been a tough watch. Like they play low event, grinded out hockey. And then like San Jose was terrible. Anaheim was terrible. So a lot of these games, like and Vancouver, like they had their one good year a few years ago. But I feel like the past 5 years, the late 9 p.m. games have been kind of brutal. But this year, I mean, Anaheim and San Jose have completely changed that around. Like I'm staying up for more hockey games this year because Macklin Celebrini's on against, like tonight, Habs, Sharks. That might be the most like exciting, open, back and forth, high paced game on the slate. And it's just because the later slate has become a lot more exciting recently, which is great. And when it starts at 7 o'clock when you're in Vancouver, it feels kind of pointless.
There you go. Well, we said it all. Time zone, the debate will never end.
Never.
Lots to get to. And we got to go put up this podcast. Jets, Blackhawks tonight, Canada Life Center. Looking forward to it. So there it is. We've said it all. For Connor Hrabchak, I'm Michael Remis. This has been another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. See ya.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.